No, the recreation just gets better, figured for it.
Well, I think the whole thing with, like Steve said, the whole thing is to keep this as broad as we can so that we can accommodate everything, and I think that this does. I agree with the appeal, but I don't know who would handle the appeal, because, like you said, if you bring a project and then those people are willing to come back and continually work through the process to where it finally fits what everybody wants, that's the way, I think, and that's the way that you guys have, seems to me that that's the way you've always worked everything. I guess that there, maybe one way to address that would be to have some kind of language in here that would guarantee any person that when they brought in that first application to continue through the process to where the application actually fits what you guys want and still remains within the boundaries of what they want, within a feasible operation of what they're trying to accomplish, I would guess. I mean, we don't wanna spend $700 million on a building and then 3 years later, whatever you were doing in that building is out of fad or whatever it is, or that activity dies off, and then you've got a building that's built for a specific person that no longer has a use. And I think that the trust board has enough sight to see that. Some people applying for grants don't have that sight. And it's pretty hard to tell them that when when they're asking for money and you're saying, well, that, it's a good idea right now, but in 3 years or in a year, that whole activity may have disappeared.
In the interest of a compromise, perhaps we go ahead and adopt the application with those few little corrections, marrying the language. So if it says required in your standards, it needs to say required in the application. If you would make those corrections, and then we revisit this either this fall or this winter, and sooner if there are any complaints, I would be good with the application to give you guys the tool to start moving forward. Hopefully you have some applicants pending,
Hopefully we do.
and if not, maybe these discussions have sparked some thoughts in people's minds of being able to pursue some activities.
I think
What
that's
is
a
that?
good compromise, that's,
Yeah.
and we're always open to.
Does that, do you guys agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Okay,
Did you have something else, Virgil?
No, I just, stand up, sometimes I can hear you guys a little better. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yes, Alan?
So, since the trust board has such a high percentage of success and favorability, what are out of curiosity, what are some of the issues that some people have that haven't received being able to get grants or assistance from them? Is it trails, is it boats, is it
it runs the
airports? Is it-
gamut.
Pardon?
It runs the gamut. So it's not one specific area, and the common issue has been lack of clarity. They didn't know what they could be granted for. They didn't feel they were, they wanted clarity. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
No, I was just-
Yeah, and they just didn't feel that there was the clarity. So.
So we have a motion, do we have a motion to adopt these goals and standards along with the grant application process? And then revisit these this fall or winter? Is there a second to that motion?
is there first?
The first.
First, yeah, I need it first. Well, see, you wanted to have some, we wanna visit this sooner than later.
Well, we're approving it,
You're right.
that's the compromise, is to
Right.
go ahead and approve
Mhm.
it. My friendly amendment to your motion was
Right.
going to be,
Yeah.
and hopefully will still be, that we make sure that conflicting language
Right.
is substituted for complementary
Yeah, I think we
language.
can fix
Because
that
right now we
fairly-
don't, yeah, that's an easy
We
one.
can fix that fairly easy.
And then just revisit how it's working
Mhm.
and what the perception of the public, members of the public are not always gonna come here to complain. Many of our folks are working, raising families, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if their response is, you know what, it's working a whole lot better, then I think we continue on. If not, maybe we have something more concrete that we can add at that point from those folks.
Yeah.
So that's the thought behind the compromise.
So do we have a first then?
I guess it's to, a motion to approve as they are with, this, some of the small language changes.
Yeah.
To revisit it here, this fall, and, make the changes as necessary.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Motion's been made, a second to approve the trust board goals and standards and the grant application with some minor tweaking, and also to revisit in the fall. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
So I think,
Motion carries.
I think early on in the process, when people come to you with a proposal, I think you probably just need to say yes or no, you know, rather than them get into the process and, you know, get shot down, get discouraged. Or maybe help them along to say, you know, this would be good if you include this, or,
Makes sense.
you know what I'm saying? I'm just looking at it from my perspective. If I was applying, I'd want to know upfront if we even had a shot at it.
And we do get quite a few inquiries.
I'm sure you do.
Oh, gosh, the reoccurring ones is they want to buy a pontoon boat and start a business out at the lake, you know, hosting parties on it. And we kind of go, I
Yeah,
don't think so. That's,
Okay. Yeah. All right, sounds good. Thanks for all your hard work, you guys.
Oh,
Thank you.
I've got a couple other minor things pertains to our stuff. The land we picked up from Bureau Rec, we're very close on the leases. Our attorney Simon has said he's very close, so we'll close that out shortly. In your responsibilities, the National Parks and Recreation handles those leases now. They require a biennial report. And I'm sure you guys that, you know, Mia brought it up to me and said, oh, by the way, and so I'm kind of going, I think you dumped the leases and probably that biennial report on the recreation board, and then 6 months later, the leases came back to us. I guess I would like authorization to hire Mia, and I'm just scratching the surface here, to be able to provide that biennial report to National Parks. I don't have any dollar figures that we will follow up with, but I'll let you know we're gonna be coming in to get out the okay for that. Only Mia knows what that entails.
I had a conversation with Mia about that specifically, and what her suggestion was, and it kind of marries what Steve is saying, is, she said, you know, why don't I do the first biennial report, and then you can go ahead and take that in-house, because at that point, it's really just cutting and pasting and
Oh, gotcha.
updating.
And that would go to the rec board.
No, the rec board is all volunteers, so you wouldn't put that on them,
Mhm.
but what I would think is we would probably have somebody on our staff
Staff.
that would pick that up. Perhaps depending on, you know, the reports, after we get the first one, it might be something that we wanna keep with Mia and the trust board, we can revisit it that time, but since she did all the work of getting that land, might be a really good idea for her to do the first
Okay.
iteration at least.
Yeah, well, a good template to follow.
Yeah,
And does that, how long does that carry
I
on?
don't think so, from
Um,
you guys direct.
probably indefinitely, or a chunk of years, I don't know, 10 years-ish.
Mhm.
Steve, do you know, is that report a indefinite? Or is there a time period where that report doesn't have to get submitted, or is
I don't
that
think so, I think
continually
that's
have to get
forever.
submitted?
And I think they gave us 2 years to get the first one done, kind of like the leases. And then I think it's staged, I think it's 5 and 10, you know, it gets to where
Okay.
it's, and I don't think it's an in-depth report. But national parks, you know, it's gonna be a federal report, so.
Okay,
But I really like that idea of having Mia do the first one, because she knows how, and then
yeah,
all of a sudden it's canned in for one of your staff members. It's no cost then, so, or minimal.
Right. We'll have a better idea after we see that first report, how to move forward.
Mia's really good with our funds, I mean, she is.
Great.
We've had, you know, several agreements, ongoing agreements with her on land acquisition, and they've virtually all fallen through, and she's come to us and said, why don't we just put this on the back burner, and if something comes up, fine, but I think Virgil's gonna follow up on that land.
okay.
With the disapproval of the grant off of the Indian Creek Range, it was recommended, I think Mia recommended that the gun club try to go to the BLM and reopen a request to take a look. And we're at the moment assembling a packet of, for the presentation, which will happen sometime late July if we get it. And I don't wanna do that until the commission is in agreement. What we're gonna do is ask for a strip along the east side, which is about a quarter mile wide, which will give us enough space to take care of about every kind of shooting activity that people wanna try. At the moment, we're pretty well confined, and we'd like to be able to have enough property to spread out. We use some of the vacant property to put the archery range in, this was several years ago, and now we don't have space to move one of the shotgun ranges, so that's the fundamental reason we'll do that. So if the commission is in agreement, we'll move forward toward the end of July.
If I may, Virgil, so the commission supported the first request.
Yes.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. Why does Mia think that when the county was not successful with BLM, that Rod and Gun Club would be? Is there a reason?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's just, maybe we can come up with a better argument, we'll see how it works, okay?
Yeah, well, whatever support you need, I think it'd be pretty easy to
Yeah.
get that from us.
We'll keep you
So,
informed.
please, thank you.
Thank you.
One final thing is the master plan at the Fair Rodeo Grounds area. There's been some discussion, and I worry that some of the complaints we're getting is perceived procrastination of our board on advancing some buildings, and I know there's some pent-up frustration from the boards out there saying, hey, we've got some money, we need some help, we want to build some buildings. You know, the trust board told the recreation board, I think oh gosh, was it February, Nicole, that we think a master plan would be required. And here we are in June, end of June, middle of June, and we're still not down that road very far. It's been discussed, and I guess we would like a letter of recommendation. Would you like us to take that over? Would you like us to use our funds and proceed with that master plan? And when, we're not gonna use local volunteers, we're gonna take certainly input from all of them, but we're gonna hire a professional firm. That's a big deal out there, that could really be an asset for the county, but we don't wanna spend several $100,000 to find out we went the wrong direction. We need pros out there to guide us. If you'd like us to proceed that way, let us know.
I would be very in support, and I think we had discussed, I think that it'd be very important for us to do that and get it going and try to get something out there so that we have something so that person has something that they can present, have a placard or a display or something in the 4-H building at the fair, telling people this is what we have, this is what we think we might want, what do you want and where do you want it and how do you want us to proceed, because if we don't, that's the best time to get the input from everybody that uses the facility. And
That's a very good
if we
idea.
don't include a broad spectrum of people, just like I said, the best thing we can do is give everybody their own building, and that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But I think that's exactly what we need to do.
Totally agree on 100%.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. And then, you know, the other part of that equation is once if we decide we're gonna do that, then we have all these different entities that need to be brought together. And I think this person that you're thinking about is probably the person that can do that.
Yeah. That's gonna be expensive, and since we've started these discussions, we kinda ran the balloon up, and it is so, you know, you have to go out to the buildings we have, what kind of condition are they in? We have to have an architectural study done on what we have out there. And some of our buildings are in not very good shape, and we need a report, find out where we're at. And there's so many things that stack with that, but we're probably talking just short of $50,000 for summation on this.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
could just keep us in the loop to follow the public process on that.
Yeah.
And all contracts need to come to us.
Absolutely.
So any that you have outstanding, if you could bring them in so that we have records
I
of
don't
that,
think
that's
we have
important.
much right now. We've got the attorney that we got approval on when you dump the leases on us, and have till August to complete that. So, yeah, but I think that's about the only thing we've got in this period of time.
Well, you should have a contract with Debbie, we should have a copy of that, and then any that you have with Mia. Those are the only ones I can think
Yeah,
of.
$25. We probably need an actual contract with her on just from a legal standpoint. I think we pay her $25 an hour, and she charges us for about 10% of her time, so. I know I pester her several times a day. You know, the accounting, the generating that $1 million, we use Stockman Wealth Management, and that's not an easily managed fund. It's a fund that we discuss with those people on a fairly regular basis, but it's served us extremely well. If we'd have taken that and just stuck it on interest, we would not. We would have like 200,000 today. So we've been. Ron O'Donnell was a CEO of that fund for a number of years, and does a marvelous job. And when things are good, he calls. So he is. We've got some really good people. And of course, then I call her, and so that's. She spends a lot of time that she doesn't charge for. So.
Okay. Anything else?
As we move forward on this, we will incorporate with the recreation board on how we're moving forward on this.
No, yeah.
There'll probably be a meeting or two together, if that's all right.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Okay, anything else?
I just don't think we can wait on the budget because we've
Yeah,
gotta
they
get the
were gonna-
preliminary. So I think we have to do something today, and
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
adhering
okay.
to the 3% increase we allowed other departments is
Laura,
important.
I had a meeting with Debbie Kelly last week, and I specifically asked her if it was okay to wait for the next trust board meeting, and she told me yes. So I went off, I communicated back to the trust board. that
Okay.
Their next meeting was July 9th, and she was fine with that.
Okay, we'll talk with Debbie then, if she
Yeah,
thinks
that's what
that's fine, then that's good with me.
just so you know.
I-
And I
Okay,
think our adjustments reflect what Debbie had in mind.
Right.
so.
Oh, okay.
You know, we put that almost $900,000 in spendable, and I listened to Debbie's recording, and her concern was, oh my gosh, you can't give somebody $900,000 in spending authority. They'll come to the end of the fiscal year, oh my gosh, look at all the money we have. Well, we generate the money, we can't spend it without your approval. So, you know, if you had $10 in there, I mean, we're gonna bring them in and we're gonna pester you with it anyway. So it's whatever number you want in that, makes no difference to us.
Okay.
Yeah, and talking about the fairgrounds master plan, would you think that that's gonna fall in, under, professional services or contract services?
Contracted.
Contracted.
Did that?
Debbie Kelly and I had a conversation, what is the difference?
Mhm.
And I'm thinking back on her email to me after we met last week. She was explaining accounting, whatever. Professional is lawyers, accountants. So I would think this would be under professional then. But maybe there's some gray area.
Can we merge those two accounts and have,
I asked her that already because of the request last week, and she said there's the bars,
Yeah,
accounts of, for local governments.
right.
And they determine which which object codes you shall have in your budgets, and it defines what they are. So we can't arbitrarily
can't
combine,
merge those?
right?
Right.
We'll get clarification
Yeah.
before.
And I guess in my mind, I'm thinking you're gonna have to sign a contract with this individual, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I'll get with Debbie Kelly
Yeah.
also,
okay,
because we kind of went through that last
right.
week.
I guess just so that
Yeah,
budget-wise, that we have the proper amount in that line item for you guys
Good point.
as to what you're thinking. Okay,
We'll make note of that. And we'll get clarification what bracket to put it in and,
yeah.
make sure we have that adequate amount there for
Okay.
that. So.
But I had told Debbie the trust board meets July 9th, and we would have that revised budget to the 10th. So it'll be on the agenda the next Monday, whatever that is. And that was okay with her. So just let us know if it's different.
Okay.
That's what I communicated to the trust board.
Al Christopherson sent us a note this morning and said, I'm staying in a very luxurious suite in the Deaconess Hospital in Bozeman right
Oh.
now. And he didn't elaborate, so hopefully it's, I know he didn't, in his new thing, they didn't have anything scheduled, so I hope it's nothing serious.
okay, that's posted, yeah.
I
Thank
have
you.
something else, yeah. My claim was denied last week. I saw in the video, there were questions about my claim. Are we,
Well, your claim wasn't denied,
oh,
but
okay.
there are questions about it.
So what's the process? I guess is my question.
How do we appeal that? No.
Well,
I
I
just
think
didn't know the formal process.
the question was why we're paying you to attend commission meetings.
I marked that down for the commissioner, for the trust board. You guys see me in here when you're talking about solid waste or whatever, that has nothing to do with trust board, that's just me as a citizen. But anytime I see on the agenda, budget, BOR, silos, I stick my head in here for Eve's even come in and out.
Okay.
So I kind of just keep a running total of each month. Even though the trust board may not be listed as the agenda, it may be an action item that they need to know about. And
Yep.
certainly that has come up.
Debbie does track her hours and we do discuss those and rarely does she charge us, like today, we gotta charge us today because she put this all together.
Charging for the prep work, fine. When you guys are on the agenda, of course, we're meeting with the board members. And then what you task Debbie with after that meeting is up to the board members. But I'm not comfortable paying people to come to commission meetings, to sit in on behalf of their boards. We appoint the board members. It's up to you guys if you wanna come in and sit in. And we would certainly support anybody coming at any time, but I am not comfortable with using public funds to pay someone to come and listen in. Again, trust board agenda, that's the trust board members we appoint. BOR silos, absolutely come and listen to the video, whatever you like, but I'm not comfortable. I said this last week, with paying somebody hired by a board to come and listen in. But I just don't think we should be paying that. Where's the line? Who do we pay now to come to meetings? So it was not the full claim, it was just the line items of coming to commission meetings.
And we have had that discussion, and Debbie does sit in here on her own time, a lot. But, you know, she serves on several, as secretary of several other organizations, so anything that pertains, she's sitting here, she's not charging the trust board for that.
Okay.
And we monitor, good call, I mean, we monitor that, we discuss it. How much time did I just spend? Well, I charged her for an hour the last 2 months. I mean, it's really been negligible. Very little time.
I get that, I appreciate that. But I can't justify it, paying for someone to come when it's not. If she were a contractor and we specifically had Debbie Randolph Trust Board on the agenda, then yes. Or Sean Higley, WWC, yes. Jerry Grabentz, Great West Engineering, yes. But for a citizen to come and just listen in, no.
She doesn't charge us for that.
Right, except for coming in to listen to BOR and the silos. That is not Debbie Randolph Trust Board called to a commission by the commissioners, or called to a commission meeting. It is a citizen coming with the idea of doing a better job for their board. But that shouldn't be covered and paid for by the citizens of Broadwater
I'm
County.
fine not charging for that anymore.
I'm sorry, but it's just, I can't justify it with the people's money.
Curious, because I have attended rec board meetings at the request of the trust board when they attend rec board meetings.
Not unless the trust board is part of the discussion, in which case it should be members, is my opinion on that. So if the rec board wants to work with the trust board on a
Right, like last
project,
month we were on the agenda.
right, then it should be the board members, and afterwards, the board members can instruct you, would you please get this information or put this together for us and pay for that time?
Quite often, we will, if we find, not unlike the recommendation on the master plan, we asked Debbie to start setting in on the recreation board because we wondered how they were progressing. That's been laying there for a few months, and now we're getting egg on our face for no advancement on it. So we asked Debbie to set in on the rec board to find out how they were coming and if there was something we could do with it to advance it. And she did, reported back to us, and how we're going to advance that is we're going to take that over. So that's why we had her at the rec board meetings. I don't think it'll be a regular thing. That's, if it doesn't pertain to grants or things that are necessary for us. It was strictly that master plan.
So these charges that you have, this is time that the trust board requested you to attend a meeting, is that essentially what that amounts to?
In all of this.
No, that's okay. We're talking about $37.
We're talking $37.
$37.50?
50, an hour and a half over a month.
It's not a lot of money,
I
it's the
kicked in
principle.
50 and kind of solved
got the
the
minutes,
problem for
Ann.
you today. It's,
I'm sure that's in the minutes.
yeah. I think that's a necessary thing. She needed to attend those recreation board meetings to find out where our requests were sitting. That's,
I think that if she's coming at the request of the board, I think that it's a legitimate claim, because they're requesting her to come to report to their members.
But where does it end? Now we've got the door open to paying every single, to, one, every board being open to having a hired secretary, and two, all of those secretaries now being paid additional money to sit in on a variety of county boards. So the fair becomes recreation, rec board for sure, commission meetings, anything on our topic could be defined as recreation. I just think it's a slippery slope. I am not comfortable with that at all. I am not debating that it's a good idea. I just don't think that that is a good expenditure of public money, and I think we open the door to a very slippery slope.
Yes,
So-
Steve?
$37 is not worth the time for you guys to be, that's a very wide paintbrush, saying every secretary and every board now has authorization. We're talking $37, that's an hour and a half in a month.
Well, there's two there, but it's not the money, Steve, it's the principle, it's the smell test, and it is the precedent. We are
We
setting a
requested it.
dangerous precedent, in my
We
opinion.
requested it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's okay, but,
Had the board not requested it, and she had attended and then charged us, we asked her to attend. So we feel we are responsible for that money, and we think she served us well in those meetings, so. That's our defense on it. And I think it should be approved.
What do you think, Darryl?
Well, I mean, they asked her to attend. I mean, in my mind, that was the reason she was here. I don't have a problem with that. I understand what Laura's saying. I think it's a legitimate claim. I think we should pay the claim.
and is this something that, this is a one-time occurrence, we're gonna pay this claim only, but not in the future? Because that would be a way of kind of helping to not set a precedent.
Yes.
Again, if we see that she needs to attend, let's say, back to the recreation board meeting, and we're not on the agenda, but we can't attend, and we say, would you go on our behalf and tell them this on their last request? She's an employee, she's going at our behest, so, if this is a one-time thing, you're pulling us back to where you're eliminating our effectiveness if we can't rely on a secretary to cover us. And as $37 shows, we don't abuse it. She doesn't abuse it. So it's,
Can we table this pending our closed door this afternoon and talk about this and some of the other issues
Yeah.
that have come up?
Yeah, we can do
All
that.
right,
Okay, thank you, folks,
thank you.
appreciate it. Sean Rowland,
thank
Town
you.
Contract Sanitarian, Nicole Brown, Community Development Planning.
My stuff.
Good morning.
Morning.
So Sean and I came up with a list. I know we have not communicated with you on this topic necessarily, other than at a previous meeting when we spoke about what some of our needs might be. So if I can make a request, can you give us a little direction why this topic was on the agenda. What are you looking for from us before we just,
I think we're looking at a definition of where these hours are going and what we're doing with the personnel for planning and sanitation, and what the involvement in the GPS GIS is gonna be.
okay.
The purchase of the GIS. I think you already had some prices on that, didn't you, for those units?
Yeah.
So at this time, the GPS unit, once both of our budgets are approved, then we'll be coming to you to make that request to purchase the GPS unit. Right now we simply have prices on it, but being towards the end of the fiscal year, it's just, we're not going to purchase it until the next fiscal year. As far as a person, Sean and I did have a conversation on what would this person be doing and how many hours are we thinking, and I think we came up with roughly 10 hours shared per week between our two departments. Is that correct? That was kind of the number, between 10 and 12?
Per department?
Well, I don't know if per department. And maybe that was our discussion. Maybe you were thinking 10 for yours and I was thinking 10 shared, but
Right.
You're talking just GPS, sorry.
well, GPS, there's I know we spoke about it at a previous meeting on GPS and GIS. There's just not enough work right now for me to justify giving this to another person. My office is very, very slow right now with GIS work. It's busy with the planning side and community development, but GIS, I get maybe one address per week this last month, and that's never happened. So it's very difficult for me to say that I would have enough work for this one person to be assigning addresses more than, doing the GIS work 4 to 5 hours a week at this time based on my workload now.
So yeah, maybe it was, now that I was thinking as a whole, how much time a
Oh, sure.
person would, not just GPS and GIS. Now, from my standpoint, the idea would be that we would continue GPSing in all the drain fields. That's what Julie was doing. We would continue to do that. And this afternoon I'm going to do 4 or 5 inspections of drain fields. And so for each drain field that we do work on, we're going to have an hour in the field inspecting it, and then probably should have an hour back in the office taking that data and doing something with that data, meaning making a map, showing where the as-built drawing, that type of thing. Ideally an hour, if you start looking at how much we charge for permits, we don't want to exceed that hour, and so we would have to streamline that process, which will take a little while with a new unit, that type of thing. But ideally, that's what we would do, and that is something that potentially an admin person would be able to do instead of me having to do that. They potentially could if the data is brought in properly. So, like this week, I probably will have 5 or 6 of those types of files that will need to be completed. And if we look at how many permits were issued maybe last year, I'm going to throw out like 150, so we'd have 150 hours over a year just for doing that type of work. But that's also something that the sanitarian could be doing. So that from when Nicole and I were talking about it, the GIS and the GPS work from the admin person is probably not their highest priority of work for us, because we both would do that and probably can do that more efficiently at this point. Now, if the right person and the right fit were to be there, we could definitely use that person to do that work. But right now, what we need help with is more of the admin type of help, which is answering the phones, letting people know where we're at, when we're available, printing, scanning, mailing, the standard administrative help for sure. And I think that serves the public the best, because I think when you get voicemail, when the public gets voicemail, it's very frustrating. I know I'm always frustrated when I go straight to voicemail, and then it takes days for somebody to respond. So I think in our discussions, the GIS and GPS is not the priority. It's more really just being available to the public and getting the documents and materials out to them. And that will save both of us a lot of time and effort and make us definitely more efficient for you.
I think that's what we had talked about. I don't think you guys were privy to it. What we talked about last week and the week before was where the administrative assistant work is needed. And so what we were talking about was a shared full-time person between sanitation and planning. That person could pinch hit with the phone calls, with the copies, with the addressing when somebody comes in. Just hand them stuff, not to do it. But then also, we had compiled from all of you guys, including Mary, how many hours you would estimate would be needed for GPS and GIS. And we threw that in as one of the items that would be included on the job description. So they'd be trained in that, but mostly administrative assistant. Does that help in understanding where we're at in the question? So we think there's 2 employees. So we have one person who's moving away to another state, and that position will be filled by another employee. So it's a wash. And then we think we need one more full-time person. So with all the needs, throwing together GPS, GIS, district court, public works, administrative assistant, and finance assistant, how can we take all those needs and put it into 2 FTEs? So what we came up with was sanitation and planning, 1 FTE, that includes any GIS needs. What do you think? Does that help with your conversation?
I think what the tricky part about the GIS and the GPS unit is if you're not using it, you're never going to get proficient with it. Even I think about, I used the unit that Julie has upstairs. I used it for 6 months when I was working in Maryland. I can't get it to work because I'm guessing it's user error. It's probably not the unit, but so if you're not using it, you're not going to get proficient or even remember how to do that. And so I think from my standpoint, I don't see someone doing too much GIS or GPS work until it's really one of their major roles.
So really, you just anticipate them being able to work with the data that you collect?
And even at this
Right.
point, probably that would be just something if they were showing the capacity to do that.
Sure. Gotcha.
Yeah, so I don't see that being much time even.
So you think it would be very little time and perhaps not even something they should be doing, because without doing it consistently, they really would not have a knowledge base.
Right.
Okay, so that would be something both of you would continue
Yes, I think,
in your departments?
and in our discussion, it really, I have a need for a GPS unit mostly for the roads, but for addressing, it's just not feasible to go out and GPS every address, to actually go and drive. I mean, that just takes way too much time. So I use aerial photos and, lots of surveys and maps to try and pinpoint a location to assign an address. So new roads and subdivisions, I could certainly use a GPS unit. Addressing, I can't think of anything else that I would be using the GPS for that this other person would be using it for. And I know that was part of the discussion with Mary when I was here. It seemed like it would be a possibility, but then to really sit down and focus on it and think about what your request is here, I just don't think that it wouldn't be worth the time to train someone to do just the small amount of GPS and GIS work. It would be mostly administrative assistant duties, answering the phones. I know for myself when I'm not in the office, someone answering the phones, but it would be a matter of finding the location. I don't really have room in my office for another person. Would they sit at the desk? Filing, I would love to have a planning board secretary. I would love to have a recreation board secretary. I'm sure there are other boards that I'm not managing that would be, could benefit from a paid secretary.
So if you
Just my
had
thoughts.
administrative assistant, you guys would continue the GPS yourselves?
Correct. I would prefer to, speaking for
Okay.
myself.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. That clears up my understanding. I don't know the GPS machineries or processes, so I'm coming at this very ignorant, so that I appreciate that. That helps. And frankly, we shouldn't be paying either of you for administrative work, because, you have other things to do. Now we know part of that's GIS and GPS. So, what do you think about a secretary or administrative assistant staying in, Sean's office, your office now?
Mhm.
But you could transfer your phone when you're gone.
Mhm.
You could leave your door open and they could retrieve, again, addresses to hand people. Would that work, in your opinion, to have them have a stationary office just across the hall?
Absolutely.
You'd be good with that too?
Oh, yeah,
Sean?
absolutely.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I think, you know, we would want to look at some way of making it more, just the way it's set up, and there may be a little more friendly to the public to coming in, maybe a countertop or just a high desk or something that's going to be a little more inviting to them, just the way we have it organized right now. I don't feel like it, you know, people kind of come and wonder if they can come in there, so, but that's an easy remedy, I believe, so.
And with our maintenance staff.
Yeah.
That's where they excel, is in that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
so, yeah. And as far as the planning board secretary, I think that's essential. You and I have talked about that. You are the planner, the community development director, and I think it's important that your board, the planning board, see that there is a secretary and it's not you.
So, we don't really need this position to be a full-time employee, do we?
To cover when you guys aren't in the office and do administrative work, what do you guys think?
To be honest, I mean, if we were to split this down the middle, I just can't say that I would have enough work for 20 hours worth of a person, if that's what you're asking me.
Right. That's what I'm
Except
asking.
for covering when you're not in the office, that'd be the big thing. Right now, you have an assistant for 3 days a week, which is what, 24
No,
hours?
2 days,
The two?
Tuesdays, and, yeah.
Oh, because she is 32 hours, so you have two.
Mm-hmm.
Is that enough?
Well, I had 12 messages from Friday, so, you know, there is that time, those phone calls that could have been answered. And some of them will forward to my voice, or to my cell phone, and I'll take care of it, of course. But, yeah, I don't know, well, there is enough work, there's work that can be done to get caught up, that somebody can spend there's a lot of scanning that still needs to be done and organizing that we talked about many moons ago. So there's work there to be done. I don't, it's probably not 20 hours. Well, no, it probably is 20 hours from my standpoint. Maybe it's not
Okay.
for you. I think it could easily be 20 hours. We could be doing more, and it's gonna, depending on the fit with the person, there could be more tasks that they're allowed to do as well. But, you know, one of the things that Janaea has done is helped coordinate my calendar, just because I'm here 2 days a week, and sometimes, like today, is not Tuesday and Wednesday, and normally I try to be here on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but because I'm here today for this meeting, I scheduled a bunch of appointments, and so I let Janaea know. We share a calendar, it's very easy in Outlook to do this now, and so she would know what I'm doing today, and then she can do further coordinating of my schedule. Like, you know, Sean's available in the morning, and then she can send me an invite, which is really nice. So someone that knows what we're doing gives the public a lot more information to know that we're not out, you know, just not doing our jobs. Because that's what it feels like, I think, sometimes to the public is, oh, they're never here.
The door's
Right.
closed. Well, and like today,
So-
I've been down here for 2 hours. I'm
Right.
working, I'm just
Right.
not in my office.
So,
You know, so when the door is closed and the lights are off, it's not always because we're off, you know, drinking coffee or, you know,
Right, and that's kind of where.
that's what we're trying to get away from.
Exactly. The public has a right to have a warm body there. And for so much of what needs to be done, it's not necessarily the bosses that people need. They need their addresses, or they need an easy
Paperwork.
question answered, or paperwork, yeah.
I think and we'd also talked about solid waste and being able to maybe also join in on that. Because, you know, that's something that's up to you. Or even some questions and answers for you all. If you're out, they could be forwarded to you as well. So, that person could really take on a lot of different roles, especially after they get up to speed on, what we do. Sure.
So Sean, a question for you as far as sanitarian duties. What do you do that requires the registered sanitarian?
So by contract, one of the things that we have is the food service or the licensed establishments require a registered sanitarian. Some counties will use what's called a sanitarian technician, and that's only by their definition, not by any type of training. They will use a sanitarian technician to go do inspections of drain fields, that's one of the biggest things I see them doing, some of the inspection work like that is related to the on-site wastewater. And so a person, eventually it would be great to have somebody that was able to do some of that, because it's hard for me to make sure I'm available to the contractors every single day that they might be backfilling. And, you know, it's our goal it's always been my goal to keep the contractors moving, right? Because if their equipment's sitting, they're not making money, and I don't want to be in the position where I'm holding them up. So having and the way that's always worked in every county that I've seen this technician type work is that they started out as the admin help, and then, you know, it's important that the admin help kind of know what we do. So you take them out in the field, they get used, so then they start learning how to do some of the inspections, and they're kind of there as a backup to make sure that there's somebody available for that as well. So I think it would be a good duty to be able to, you know, as you list, you want to make sure that they can go outside, and, you know, that they, you know, there's those strange as requested or as needed kind of duties. So I can see that being a good role for someone to be in as well.
Something they could maybe advance into.
Mhm.
So perhaps looking at what we have now, which would be a 32-hour per week employee, would be a good place to start. Your 20 hours plus, and then that would be 12 hours per week for you. That could be spread throughout the week. It could be 4 days, so that there's a presence there when you guys, on the days that you're most apt to be out of the office, and you guys could be there on the days you're most apt to be in. There will be fits and starts, but what do you guys think? Instead of full-time, doing 32 or 30? Or 28, I think that'd be difficult. I think 30 or 32 gives us the opportunity to get somebody a little bit more.
It makes a little
Qualified.
more sense to me to approach it that way.
I think definitely just having a consistent set of hours for both of us, where they know that there's even if it's not us, but where there's someone that they can talk to, because a lot of the time the question is, I just needed to know what to put on this paperwork.
Or I just need a copy of.
Yeah, and but we're the ones that are kind of the keepers of that right now. And so they don't necessarily need us. And they can move forward and go on with their lives, so.
Nicole, for you, the communication aspect, would that be something where even just the 12 hours would free you up to be able to get some of those postcards done?
I think so, I mean, it's not a matter of finding the time, I mean, right now with the postcards, it's a matter of content. What do you want? You know, doing this first one, I really need some direction from the commission. What do
Yeah.
you want this to look like? What do you envision? And then I can move forward on it pretty rapidly. But I think that's a conversation we need to have, and you need to give me direction on what do you want on this, on these postcards, how frequently do you want them? And I don't feel like it's a matter of freeing up necessarily. But it would be nice to have someone there, because, you know, I do hear that, you know, well, you're not in the office. Well, yes, some days I go to lunch. I know I've told this commission I come in at 9. I'm usually here until 6:30, you know, no earlier than 6 on most days. If I do, I take a shorter lunch. But to have someone there for these 2 hours that I'm sitting down at the commission meeting sure would be nice. So it doesn't look like the office is just closed.
Yeah.
So that's really what I would like, to get rid of some of that, you're never in your office, because I feel like I'm there an awful lot.
Yeah. And perception is the reality for some
Mhm.
folks, and for us to be able to give as much truth to that as possible. is
Right.
important. So if we were to start that position as a 32-hour, are you guys good with that as a starting plan?
Yeah, we could take a look at it, and, is this paid for out of their budget, Sam? Is this how we're gonna do that?
Out of what?
Is we gonna put this into their budgets for these people?
Well, it's already there for the sanitarian
Right.
budget, and yeah, we would add the few
Mhm.
hours to the planning budget.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be with yours, we have the Wheatland turn lanes to help with planning because of the past. And with yours, your budget already has it in it, so no, it shouldn't be anything additional.
And I know last fiscal year there were some hours built into my budget, and I don't know how many. I think I used 4 of them.
Yeah,
So.
there's a leftover
Mhm.
vacancy savings
Mhm.
that we can move forward.
And with that being said, too, you know, this isn't the appropriate time, but I want you to be aware of it, that I would like to go back to 32 hours if possible, or less than 40. You know, with mine and my husband's business, it's growing, thankfully, but it requires more of my time. So that would be a cost savings to my budget I would like you to consider as well.
No way.
That could offset.
But then too, that, you know, that person could fill in some more hours in my office. So just in the matter of being open with you, that's a request I would like to make in the future. And, you know, depending on how you feel about it, you can certainly tell me no, you're my bosses. So,
Would you be able to get everything done with a 32-hour? Or if we were to say it's 32 hours with the ability for you to work more if needed?
mhm.
Could you
No,
get everything
absolutely.
done?
You know, absolutely. Right now, I think it almost seemed like, you know, it was very busy in those winter months, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the weather, that summer just won't get here. You know, the addressing has really just been so minimal. I'm really surprised, but
You do have some heavy lifts. I know there's a number of subdivisions.
yes, there are.
The TED
Hmm.
and the postcards for communication to the public.
Exactly. So there are some big projects
The
out there.
website.
And the website, but the website I'm finding is quite simple. You know, when I have updates that come in, I just do it right away. That takes 5 minutes at a time, so maybe an hour over the course of a week. But if we want to do something more with the website, that can certainly take more time. So,
Well, I'm willing to try it, if that is, if you think you can get everything done, and we
Mhm.
can always go back to 40 if you can't.
mhm. I just, you know, I'm thinking in the interest of saving the county time, or saving the county some money. If that would work, and, you know, I might prove myself wrong, but I really think I can get what I need done in 32 hours.
And it might be something to start, if we're going to do that in a little bit, to give you
Mhm.
the extra time needed to train somebody.
Mhm.
So maybe a August timeframe
Yeah,
to look
certainly.
at.
Mhm.
Okay. Good. All right, you've answered my questions.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.